they had to lay to rest my eldest sister. So I am actually lucky number 7 in the clan. And my brother here is the one who I like to refer to as the accident. Judging from the fact that there's a bigger gap between myself and my next oldest brother and myself and my brother, it's probably, I'm probably the accident in this, but I would like to think that it made their life so much better. So this is the family that I came from. This is the family that I created. This is my husband. You can see him there in the middle. It's my son, Nathan, who is firmly in that stage where, Mom, can we stop with the pictures already? And this is Natalie, my big girl. She turned 4 a couple of weeks ago. And this is my family. They are my pride and joy. And as we discussed a little earlier, I am 38 years old. I am serving as the Chief Operating Officer for this market, which includes these 2 facilities and freestanding ED. 38 years old. Now I can tell you that if you had asked me about where I would be at this age, this is not where I would have anticipated I would have been. Not based on where I started, not based on where I came from. It logically doesn't follow the pattern of good things happening to me. But I'm grateful to be able to say that my cup runneth over. I am incredibly blessed to serve in an organization like this with the people I work with, and to have what I have. And I'd like to be able to tell you women in the audience today that by the time you get to this point in your career, you will never think about what your next step is and approach it with fear or approach it with concern about whether or not you're able to do the job. But I can't. Because one of the hallmarks, I think, of successful leadership is this notion of insufficiency. And it's a heavy word, and if we let it sit with us for a little while, you can get kind of lost in it. So I did some work. I actually found out that the word insufficiency has Latin origins, and it literally translated means not sufficing. In our modern day language, we would say things like, this is deficient, or we'd say, this is sparse. We would say, this is inadequate. But the one that resonates most with me is, you would say that this thing is not enough. It is not enough. Unbelievable how we as women and as leaders in our communities, in our different spaces, in our families, can look at everything that we've accomplished, come to the point where we have another challenge to tackle, and we say, even after all of this, I'm not enough. My experience is not enough. I'm too young. I'm too old. I have too many kids. I have no kids. And so one of the things that we really need to be mindful about this notion of insufficiency is that it causes each and every one of us, no matter how old or young you may be, it really transforms us into storytellers. One of my favorite authors, Brené Brown, she has this saying that she uses. She says, the story I'm telling myself, or the story I made up is, and I found in my experience that insufficiency will do that to you. Insufficiency will cause you to make up a story. You tell yourself a story about why you are not capable, why you are inadequate, why you are not enough for the next leadership challenge. One of the first things that insufficiency requires in order to thrive is comparison, right? That's how it works. And with comparison, you have to have one thing, and then you have another thing, and you have to be able to put them beside each other, evaluate where they are, and then make a determination. With numbers, with math, with things that are objective, that works. It's a really good plan, because 1 will always be less than 2 as a number, and 10 will always be greater than 0. For objective things, it's easy, right? A comparison is no problem, because the truth is the truth. Math is math. Science is science. What is true. When you turn that, though, and you take that notion of comparison and you translate it to people, now you're moving from a space where you're making objective observations, and now you have to move into a space where everything you notice is subjective, right? It's subjective. And what comparison in people causes to happen is that just by the very nature of comparison, You end up elevating one thing to a status that makes it huge. You attribute all of the great things to the thing that you're comparing it to, while at the same time, sometimes inadvertently, and without even recognizing it, you make the other thing incredibly small. How often do we do that to ourselves? How often do we allow the myth of not being good enough? How often do we allow that to cause us to take somebody from simple admiration, we elevate them to godlike status, and we make ourselves very, very tiny? It's comparison. There is one author who says comparison is the thief of joy. In my experience, I have found that to be overwhelmingly true. Because there's no way it doesn't allow room for you to acknowledge and celebrate what is good about yourself. It doesn't allow room for you to celebrate your accomplishments because you're too busy focused on the other person. The second thing that's required in order for you to assess whether or not something is insufficient or something is not enough is that you have to make a judgment, right? So we've done the work, we have set up the comparison, we have evaluated the two things. Now you have one that's a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller, and what math tells us in this equation is that you need something in the middle, right? And so now you make a judgment about the position of one thing in relation to another. And in this case, you can see here that the thing that we admire, the thing that we've attributed all of the good qualities to, the person that we've attributed all of the good qualities to, we've made them greater than ourselves. It's scary, isn't it? It's scary because we do that without even thinking. And we use these types of judgments, we use these types of comparisons, we use them every day to disqualify ourselves from leadership. No, don't ask me to do that presentation. I don't like talking up front. Please don't make me do it, please don't make me do it. You should ask her, have you seen her present? She's really good. Please don't make me do it. I'm not good enough, I can't do it. Don't ask me to lead that way. Or they come to you and they say, hey, there's an opportunity for you to grow into management. Would you like to take it? No, not me. I've only been in this job for like 6 months. I can't possibly do it. I don't have enough experience. Ask her. She's been doing that work for 20 years. She'll be much better at it than I am because I am not enough. I am insufficient. I am inadequate. I cannot lead because I am insufficient. I'd love to tell you that this goes away. But one of the things I've found is that with insufficiency, the only way up is through. And we have to figure out how to get through it. And so I want to share a couple of things with you that will transform these stories that we're telling ourselves, because my faith and my experience has taught me that in order for me to dispel a myth, for me to get rid of something that is false, which is what insufficiency does. It gives us false perceptions of who we are and what we're capable of. In order for me to dispel that, I have to replace it with truth. So I want to share with you 3 truths that I have actually used fairly regularly over the course of my experience to get me through these moments. And the first of those is the 2-step rule. And before you get too excited, I am not going to dance. This is not that type of 2-step. But it is this notion of, it speaks to that notion of inexperience, right? So if we think about our journeys, if we think about our careers, most of us will think about the end point or like the summit of our careers being likened to a mountain. We have a path that we think we're gonna progress, and when I get to this point, right on the top of the mountain, I will plant my flag, and then I shall be a leader, and you shall call me a leader. Don't call me a leader any minute before. Don't ask me to lead a minute before, because I need all the experience that I have from getting to the top of a mountain. Can I let you guys in on a little secret? It's a little secret. Not many people know it, so lean in close. All mountains are not the same height. All mountains are not the same height. And so while you have crafted in your mind what the mountain, what the pinnacle, what the summit of your career, that point is that gives you all the experience that you need, that's your mountain. It's not your mountain, right? My mountain and yours are different. The funny thing is that where you are right now in your career, in your experience as a mother, in your experience as a leader, where you find yourself right now is the top of somebody else's mountain. And there is somebody else who is looking at you. There is somebody else looking at you, wanting desperately to understand how you got from where they are to where you are. So the trick is, you don't need to be at the top. You really only need to be 2 steps ahead. If you look at the picture here, you can see it's a mountain, right? And you notice that there are different climbers on this mountain. This guy down here is what I call classic millennial syndrome. You can't see it well, but he's on his cell phone. I promise you he's taking a picture and posting it to his Instagram right now. How are you on the backside of Mount Everest posting a selfie? How does that work? Okay. So he is clearly not paying attention right now, but he's gonna need somebody's help. And this guy up here is way at the top of the mountain. Now, if this guy needed help, right? He's trying to make his way up the mountain. Do you think that he can call out to this person up here and ask for help? Do you? Do you think he'd hear him? No. This guy really needs help from the person who's closest to him, right? The person who's simply 2 steps ahead. The person that is here, do you think he can reach back and say to him, hey, when you get to that, please turn your foot to the left and then balance on your right leg. Do you think he could do that for him? Absolutely. Is he at the top of the mountain? He's not. He's just 2 steps ahead. Don't let your perception of what your experience is or how much experience you have or don't have, don't let it stop you from being able to be a leader. Because you really only need to be 2 steps ahead. Not 10 years, not 30 years, not 50 years, simply 2 steps ahead. The second truth I want to share with you is, it's not me, it's you. And if this were a movie, that would be a really bad breakup line and everybody would go crying, and it's not a movie. If we're honest with ourselves, and if we really reflect on the moments where we feel most insecure and most insufficient, most inadequate. Most of us who really evaluate those times will tell you that I feel that way because I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid of what they're gonna think about me if I ask this question in a meeting. I'm afraid of what they're gonna say if I mention this thing. I'm scared. And so a lot of the time that we spend in this wilderness of insufficiency, it's because we have placed all of the focus on ourselves. Now, I'll give you a personal story, right? I remember last year when I first was appointed to this job, it was March 22nd, that was my first day. So I'm not even at a year yet. And as you can imagine, coming into this role, it's my first really executive leadership role. I already have notions in my mind of what experience I need to be able to qualify for that. And I come into this role in the middle of a pandemic. And by virtue of the nature of a pandemic, the people who are needed most are those with clinical skills. Guys, I have to tell you, I don't have any clinical skills. I would be able to save your life for a second until the paramedic gets there with my staying alive. I can do chest compressions, and I will keep you alive, but I can't. I got nothing else. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I am not a therapist, I have nothing. And I found myself very early on in my appointment caught up in this vicious loop that says, what is the value? You clearly don't have enough experience to be in this place. Why are you even here? You can't do anything. Like, what value are you adding to this? And I promise you, it gets hard when you're in that space, in this loop, this never-ending loop of negative feedback to yourself. And one morning while I was doing my devotions, I can't even remember now what I was reading, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. Because the notion of what I was reading said, listen, can we just stop talking about you for a second? Can you just stop thinking about yourself for a second? Look at the people around you. Look at where you are. What do they need? What do they need? Do they need more nurses and doctors? Absolutely. But you can't give them that. So what do you have? What can you give? And I said, well, last time I checked, I still have 2 really good working hands. And from that meeting I was in and from what I've been observing, they need help folding isolation blankets. Isolation, help me, gowns, not blankets. Isolation, told you, not clinical, told you. I told you, there it is. They need help folding isolation gowns. What does that take? It takes 2 hands. I have 2 hands. I can fold an isolation gown, and I'll do you one better. I have 5 other friends who are just like me with no clinical experience who can also help you fold isolation gowns. The ability to take something, shift the focus off of yourself and turn it around so that you flip it to look at what do I do? What do I have? And how can I use it to be of service to the people around me? That is transformative, because what it does is it takes you out of this never-ending negative insufficiency loop and places you in a position to actually add value. Because by helping others, we're actually helping ourselves. Take the focus off of the me. Put the focus on the you. How can I help you? How can I be of service? This last truth is probably my favorite, and it's the one that resonates with me the most. And it is this notion of authenticity. Authenticity. Anybody ever heard that word before, authenticity? What do you think it means? Real. It means that you're real. I knew somebody was gonna say that. I'm keeping it real, y'all. I am what I am. Yes. I'm keeping it real. What else? What are some of the other things that come to your mind when you hear the word authenticity?
Truth.
Truth. You hear truth. And I'm not surprised at all that that's where our minds went, but that's where my mind went first too. But I want to share with you something from the psychologist's perspective that talks about authenticity and what it really is. Authenticity, in addition to just keeping it real, keeping it 100, is a state of mindfulness, right? And mindfulness says, I am here right now, I'm in the present. I'm not going to think too much about what's happening before. I'm not going to think about what's happening in the past. I'm going to be right here. I'm going to be present in this moment. I'm going to feel what I'm feeling. That feeling that tightness I have in my chest, I feel that. What is that? Oh, I think I might be a little bit nervous. Oh, is that what that is? So it allows you to take a moment to be self-aware, to really connect with the things that you're feeling. And then on top of that, it allows you to do that, to acknowledge your feelings, acknowledge where you are without passing judgment on yourself. And you remember in the beginning, one of the things we talked about with insufficiency, in order for that to thrive, is we have to make a judgment. Authenticity says, no, I don't need to make a judgment, because this just is what it is. I have a feeling, I have an emotion. Emotions on their own are not bad. That's okay. I can look at somebody else and say, I really admire the way she speaks. And that not come back at me and say, oh, well, I don't do that. I'm not good enough, without turning it into that loop. It's the ability to simply acknowledge what is and accept it for what it is and move forward. Because ultimately, we have learned to give ourselves the gift of unconditional love. That is authenticity. It's the ability to see ourselves for who we are, see ourselves where we are, accept it for what it is, and move on. So here's what I do sometimes when I get caught in a place where I'm in that cycle where I take somebody and I exalt them to like a status way above me, and I've made myself small. I pretend like I'm Santa Claus without the red suit and the belly and the snow, because the snow's a no-no. I make a list, right? I make a list of all of the qualities that I see in that other person that I admire. I make a list, just write it down on pen and paper or mentally, make a list. And rather than taking that list and using it as something that I'm comparing myself to, I said, oh, I actually like that quality. Can I think of a time when I've exhibited those qualities? And I make a list of moments in my life, moments over the course of my experience, where I've exhibited those qualities. Because what it shows me is that there is no absence in me. I'm not inadequate. There is no scarcity of those qualities in me. I have the same qualities that you have. They may be present to different levels because of our experience or because of the situations that we're in. But you're a good person, I'm also a good person. You're a good writer, I'm also a good writer. And that's okay. We can both be good at the same time. We can both be good at the same time. Authenticity removes this whole notion of judgment. And it really transforms this picture into what it really should be. We're just existing. We're equal. We can support each other. We can share with each other. We're not competing. This isn't a race. Together, we both can have these same qualities at the same time. And that's why this one is one of my favorites, because it really helps us to understand where you are in relation to somebody else. Now, I'd love to be able to end my time with you by saying that you will never have another moment where you feel like you're not enough again. I wish I could wave this magic wand over this entire room of female leaders here and say, it will never happen to you again. I can't promise you that. One of the things that I've learned is that no matter how far up the chain you go, these feelings still persist. You still have those moments where you don't feel like you're good enough, or you don't feel like you should be in a space. It's going to happen. But here's what I want to tell you, and this is what I want to ask you to do for me. When the myths of insufficiency say you're not enough, when it says you don't have enough experience, when it says you don't have the right gender, when insufficiency tells you you're not enough because your skin color is different, or because your hair is different from mine, or because you're from a different place, or because you're too young, or because you're too old, or because you've spent too much time outside of the workforce, because you've been a mom and now you're trying to re-enter the workforce. When insufficiency tells you that you are not enough, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to remember these three truths. And I want you to lead anyway. Because there is somebody, somewhere, who is relying on you to do just that. To lean into the insufficiency and to lead anyway. I wish for you all a really good day. Thank you for spending these last few minutes with me. I appreciate you.